This is it, the start of a new era. Well, technically the Heisei era started during Black RX, but in terms of Kamen Rider, the Heisei era is from Kuuga onwards. As some may know, there was a huge gap of Rider shows after Black RX, with there only being a few movies. So what caused the revival of Kamen Rider? There was a resurgence of Rider merchandise that created a buzz around Japan. Toei was aware, and so the rest is history. Alright, let's get into the show. Naturally, we start with episode 1, Revival. You probably know why it's called Revival. So the show opens with a tribute to Shotaro Ishinomori, and you'll see bits here and there that will feel like homages to his past works too. We then see text that says, "Please watch in a well-lit room." I don't think people in the modern day do that, especially when binge watching other shows. Now we begin with a look into the past. An ancient warrior is seen fighting monsters until he is laid to rest, then a hand appears over his coffin. Cue intro theme. I wasn't really too fond of the theme at first, but it started to really grow on me. I think it's because I understand the overall theme that it's going for. The whole "I'm going to be stronger with no fear and no pain." It really parallels the show's own ideals. At an airport, we meet our protagonist, Yusuke Godai, as he tries to cheer up a lost child, but when that doesn't work, he does the only thing an adult would do. Juggle? Next we see a woman working on her computer. This woman is named Sakurako Sawatari, and she's a longtime friend of Yusuke. She was working on translating a language found in a nearby ruin, when she stumbled across a warning, so she calls the excavation team only to find out that they're in danger. Yusuke hurries. On his way there, he sees lightning coming from the ground. That same morning, Yusuke arrives. He talks to an officer where we have a decent attempt at humor in an otherwise serious season. By the way, this officer's name is Ichijo. I love him already. Yusuke also sees a brand new toy. Ancient belt. Its name is called the Arkell and has a pretty cool design, which I'll get into in a bit. Yusuke introduces Ichijo to Sakurako. The three go to the police station to watch a video from the excavation. Ichijo leaves but gives Yusuke and Sakurako the Arkell to study. Meanwhile, a monster attacks with the power of dated special effects. During the attack, Yusuke puts on the Arkell because he feels like it. Then he becomes Kamen Rider Kuuga. I gotta say, Kuuga's suit designs aren't exactly my favorite, but they do grow on you. Dated CGI aside, I did say I liked the Arkell's design. It's simple, but it looks like it could be an actual relic. The suit's torso is very basic with almost nothing for the bottom half. This white Kuuga is known as his growing form, though other forms are similar to what I described. Yusuke and the monster fight, ending up in a helicopter that Ichijo is in. After the battle, Yusuke gives a thumbs up until sundown. Now for the ending theme. I really like this song. It's very soothing and I love harmonica. Later on, we see a funeral for one of the archaeologists that died while digging through the ruins. During the funeral, a young girl begins to cry. Yusuke sees this and decides that he wants to fight so everybody would be able to smile. A little cheesy, yes, although it adds to Yusuke's character. Ichijo was given a tip that a monster is residing in a church. He tries to fight it, but fails. Then Yusuke arrives. This is Kuuga's mighty form. Okay, a long time ago I didn't really like Kuuga's suits that much cause they were definitely outdated in-betweens of Showa and Heisei. Now I really like them, especially the other forms we'll see later. Mighty form has a really nice shade of red and the torso is so shiny, and the helmet is such a classic. In a meeting, the police discuss these monsters. The police call them unidentified life forms. Kuuga growing form is referred to as unidentified life form number 2, Kuuga mighty form is number 4, and so on. You should notice by now that police are a pretty big part of Kuuga, and that's something I really like. They start out being weak against a threat that they know nothing about, but then they gather more intel and find out how to fight these monsters. It's also logical that a hero like Kuuga would want to work together with the police to help defend the city, even though at first the police were wary on Kuuga's help, which is a natural reaction. After all, the police don't know that Yusuke is Kuuga. Later on, Ichijo just so happens to bump into a woman that speaks a different language, which seems a little suspicious to him, so he follows her and comes across a strange scene. The unidentified life forms speak in their own language. This language wasn't subbed in Japanese during Kuuga's first airing on TV, so even the Japanese didn't understand their dialect. If you're a Westerner and want to watch Kuuga, then you are able to watch with their language translated. What they say is the usual dialogue you would hear from villain groups, and they also talk more about themselves and who they are. So you can go either way on either watching the language subbed or not. Ichijo pondered on the thought that Yusuke truly wanted to help, so Ichijo gives Yusuke a brand new toy. bike, which Yusuke uses to chase after a monster. I appreciate these bike stunts. Really, I do. I love them. However, it would probably be easier to get off the bike and actually fight. Police arrive during Kuuga's fight and one of them fires their gun, but Ichijo tells the officer to stop. Ichijo trusts in Kuuga. Ichijo and Yusuke go to the hospital to get Yusuke examined. A doctor named Tsubaki tells Yusuke that the Arkell is growing a central nervous system inside him, and it's very dangerous because it'll keep growing. A monster then appears that has the ability to jump on buildings. Ooh, scary. Yusuke chases after the monster on a staircase, but the monster pushes him off. And so, by the power of believing in himself, Yusuke gains a new blue form that allows him to jump higher. So remember the crying girl from episode 2? No? I don't blame you, but the show wants you to remember because she's a recurring character. Her name is Mika and she's here to show Ichijo a relic from the excavation, but Ichijo tells her to talk to Sakurako. At her place, we find out that the unidentified life forms call themselves Grongi, which is what I'll be calling them from now on because unidentified life forms is a mouthful. Mika gives Sakurako the relic. Then Mika acts like a brat because she thinks that no one cares about getting rid of the Grongi. I'd go on a rant here about how ungrateful Mika is being considering Yusuke is trying his hardest to save mankind and avenge Mika's father, but that's okay. She doesn't know any better. Yusuke gets pushed off while fighting another Grongi. Again. And so, by the power of not wanting to die, Yusuke gains a new green form that heightens his senses, which overwhelms him. Ichijo meets up with Yusuke to warn him that a Grongi is in the area, preparing to attack. Yusuke transforms and Ichijo hands him a gun. This scene is so cool. You know what else is cool? Yusuke, by the power of sword montage, gains a new purple form in the following episodes. Because. Okay, he doesn't actually get these powers that easily. It may seem like the power-ups are just handed to him, but they show growth in Yusuke's character and abilities. Some are new powers to match up to an enemy, while others come from Yusuke's feelings of wanting to save everyone's smiles. Though I think it's funny that characters get surprised when Kuuga has new forms despite the Arkell having different colored buttons. We expand the toy catalog, continue the plot, in episode 15. Mika's relic was infused with other relics and it became a flying beetle. Alright then. There are a couple of episodes dedicated to this beetle thing, which I don't mind. I really like how a lot of time is spent to build upon the show's mythology. It's told to us later that this armor is called Gouram. It used to be horse armor that helped fight ancient Grongi. In a similar bit of exposition, the stone within the Arkell that gives Yusuke power is called the Amadan. And apparently it's how Grongi are able to transform into monsters, in turn meaning that Kuuga is a Grongi himself. We see Yusuke fighting Grongi number 26 until Yusuke gets in trouble. He's rushed to the hospital and eventually succumbs to the poison that was in 26's bite. Tsubaki tries to kickstart Yusuke's heart. Meanwhile, the police desperately try to fight off number 26, but they fail and question Kuga's whereabouts. Hours later, Ichijo gets a call. Tsubaki wasn't able to revive Yusuke. Tsubaki calls his friends, but they believe he'll be back. It turns out that Yusuke did come back to life. We also see an awkward CGI rendition of him giving the thumbs up. And here's a cute scene of Yusuke wanting to say Cho Henshin whenever he transforms. A few episodes later, we see a oh my gosh. I wonder how many Japanese kids had nightmares about this. Of course, Yusuke is called to defeat the Grongi and he turns purple. Well, even more purple and his other forms also get powered up in the episodes that follow. What I like about this is that Kuga's armor still retains the basic design for the different forms, but a golden trimming is added, along with more powerful weapons. I know it's only a minor addition, but it adds so much to the designs. It makes the suit seem more grand and majestic. Around here is when we would normally get a movie based on the season, but Kuga's budget was very poor. Instead, we got a Hyper Battle video and a New Year's special. The special is basically a 1-hour clip show. What's interesting about Kuga's HBV is that it gives the names of Kuga's forms. The show itself never directly says the names of these, so it's nice to have them out here. Red is Mighty form, blue is Dragon form, green is Pegasus form, and purple is Titan form. The HBV and the show don't outright say this, but the gold trim suits are called Rising forms. Other than that, Kuga's HBV isn't anything special. Kuuga gets a call to fight a monster, and that's literally it. This Hyper Battle video was meant to preview Kuga's Rising Mighty form. which would have been cool if it didn't already debut in the episode before this. We get a bit of insight for Yusuke's character in episode 35. After seeing a news report on civilians dying due to a Grongi attack, we see Yusuke feeling regret and anger for not being able to save those innocent people. He tracks the Grongi and proceeds to beat on him. I feel like a person carrying the burden of being a hero would feel regret and anger too if they weren't able to save everyone, so they take it out on the enemy. While beating on the Grongi, Yusuke gets visions. When it's all said and done, he stands in the river alone with his thoughts. Meanwhile, Ichijo encounters another Grongi. Someone named Daguva will arrive soon. In a meeting with all of Yusuke's allies, we get a ton of exposition, so bear with me as I explain everything as best as I can. The police know that the Grongi have a leader, which they later find out to be named Daguva. Apparently, Daguva killed off more than 150 of his fellow Grongi because he believed that they were too weak to participate in the Geguru. The Geguru is a game that the Grongi play. Whoever wins the Geguru is allowed to challenge Daguva for dominance over all other Grongi. Each Geguru has a Grongi that acts as a judge and a Grongi that acts as an official kill counter, because a Geguru requires a certain amount of linto, or humans, to be killed. Every Geguru has its own set of rules. Some are as simple as kill a certain amount of people in a certain amount of time, to being as complex as kill people by melting them down with a strong aesthetic and 10 types of moving objects that reflect the color pattern of a Grongi's nails. Tsubaki then says that if Yusuke doesn't do anything soon, Kuuga may become the ultimate darkness and lose control. But Yusuke says that he'll be fine. In a battle against one of the last Grongi, Yusuke becomes heavily injured and gets taken to the hospital. Tsubaki is hesitant on using defibrillators again because it changed Yusuke last time. It turns out that the defibrillators were what caused Kuuga to gain more power in the first place with his rising forms. Either way, Tsubaki doesn't have a choice this time because Yusuke's heart rate starts dropping. The police are able to kill some of the last Grongi, but a couple are still out there. Then Yusuke arrives. The two fight and Kuuga gains a new black form. With this new power, the Grongi dies and causes a huge explosion that almost reaches the city. Meanwhile, the final two surviving Grongi talk. Daguva has arrived. We see a white figure, a monster. Kuuga's belt has been cracked. The entire city is on fire. All of this was Kuuga's first attempt at fighting Daguva. Yusuke decides that it's time to end all of this, but if his first attempt failed, then he may not come back this time. So he spends his final moments saying goodbye to his friends and allies. Meanwhile, Ichijo faces the penultimate Grongi and kills her. All that remains is Daguva. Yusuke and Ichijo drive to the mountains to face him. Ichijo apologizes for dragging Yusuke into all of this, but Yusuke is thankful that he met Ichijo in the first place. 見ててください。俺のHenshin. Daguva and Yusuke fight for so long that they manage to break each other's amadons, but they continue in their human forms. Then Ichijo finds both of their bodies in the snow. 3 months later, Tsubaki tells Ichijo that the Grongi failed because they wanted their own smiles while Yusuke sacrificed his own for the sake of others. On the beach, we see Yusuke laying down under the sun. He sees kids playing, so he juggles for them to see their smiles. There's also a short 50th episode that pokes fun at some of Kuuga's tropes while breaking the fourth wall. It's pretty entertaining. I wish more seasons did this more often. One last thing. Thank you, Midnight Crew subs, for subbing this amazing series. Henshin! Kamen Rider Kuuga. Some of you may know that I already made a history of Kamen Rider Kuuga a long time ago, but it got taken down because Toei. Back then, my opinion on Kuuga was mixed. Some people took what I said the wrong way when that wasn't my intention at all. It's been a very long time since making that video, so now would be a good time to say that opinions can change. While mixed at first, I grew to enjoy Kuuga so much. My complaints back then weren't all that warranted. To a point. Let me just say that nostalgia plays a huge part in enjoying something. While I do like a lot of Heisei Phase 2 shows, I also enjoy earlier works. Both Showa and Heisei have their charms, their ups and downs. It's okay to not like one or the other. A common criticism from certain people I see for modern seasons is that they're not like the old seasons. You can probably guess that those certain people are older fans. Although, these shows are a lot more alike than you think. Both still have a lot of good drama. They have great characters, and even older seasons shill toys just like the newer ones. Gouram, the multiple bikes, action figures, and a heck of a lot of forms. They're made to sell merchandise, and in some ways, shill a bit more than Heisei Phase 2 seasons. I wouldn't even say that Kuuga incorporates these toys in a good way. Sometimes they just appear. That's also not to say that Heisei Phase 2 isn't made purely for these toys. Soapbox aside, I'm saying this to make points that I'm gonna get into. The story is good, with how simple it is. While most superhero shows, Kamen Rider included, can be summed up with heroes need to fight villain, that's pretty much Kuuga. It's a point A to point B kind of plot with lots of mini stories in between. As I always say in these videos, I only bring up the bigger events in case you're interested in watching the seasons yourself, so you'll have some things I didn't bring up to look forward to. I think Kuuga is more about the people around Yusuke rather than focusing on Yusuke himself. There are stories about each side character, some that last a few episodes, and they're all very interesting. I like seeing how an everyday person is affected by monster attacks. It was cool to take a look within police headquarters to see what they're planning. And while Kuuga does get screen time to himself, I think it's way more interesting to see the people around him dealing with these situations. As I said earlier, Kuuga didn't have the best budget, so money had to be saved. As a result of that, there are clip shows. There are a couple of them, which brings me to talking about filler. I'm saying that filler is not a bad thing, though the word is thrown around way too much these days. Filler means taking up space without doing anything for the story or characters. There are some episodes where Yusuke's only contribution is to fight a Grongi at the end, and the story is so minuscule that the only thing moving it forward is when said Grongi is defeated. I'd say Kuuga has a lot of filler, to the definition, and that's okay. These episodes are entertaining enough for me and anyone to sit through and see what happens next within its tiny 20-minute runtime. Of course, there are arcs and mysteries for the story to be more entertaining. The Arkell, Kuuga himself, and the Grongi give amazing world building, though I wish there was a bit more of it. We do have extra backstory outside of the show, such as Riku, Kuuga's previous user, a novel about Mika becoming Kuuga, and a story about Ichijo using a man-made prototype of a rider in the next season. All of that sounds pretty awesome. Maybe extra things like that could make the show feel a little less slow. Speaking of which, with filler and story being brought up, I have to mention the pacing. A gentleman named Vicious Phantom put it the best way. Kuuga is an acquired taste. If you didn't grow up with Kuuga and have nostalgia to it, then there's a chance that you may not like the show going in. Of course, some people fall in love with the season immediately. The characters are charming from their introduction and the action is more physical than you would see today. The pacing to others can be seen as sluggish. If you're not used to slow dramas or older media, then maybe this isn't for you. Kuuga isn't flashy due to its budget, but it doesn't need to be. The director wanted a lot more action, and if it happened, then others would think very differently from their nostalgia. It's not a very fair criticism to say that someone isn't a real fan or doesn't get it just for not enjoying a show like Kuuga, and statements like that could deter others away. With Kuuga's minimal story and pacing different to others, then there's more room for points to flow and for characters to understand what kind of situation they're in. A character I fell in love with from the very first scene is Yusuke. He's your basic heroic type with just a dash of other emotions besides happiness. His intentions for saving people's smiles seem very genuine. Yusuke has a quirk for giving the thumbs up because his teacher taught him to use it as a sign of goodwill. That's so heartwarming, and there are a lot more moments like it. The scene where he absolutely beats on a Grongi for killing a lot of innocent people feels real. Yusuke also has a lot of funny moments, some of which became memes that you would see on Twitter or Facebook. Yusuke is very wholesome, which is probably why I have yet to see anyone actually dislike the character. I know people are gonna want me to bring this up, but yeah, Yusuke's actor, Joe Odagiri, doesn't really like tokusatsu. Although he said that he did like Kuuga and still has contact with other staff from the show. Man, now if only Yusuke came back in a future season. And if he does, I know people are gonna comment here about it. Ichijo is an amazing support character. Though he isn't a secondary writer, he doesn't need to be, as he gets as fleshed out as one would. If the camera isn't on Yusuke or his friends, we see Ichijo work with the police and fighting off Grongi himself. He's probably one of the most real characters I've seen. He works so hard and can barely find time for himself. Ichijo is always alongside Yusuke and trying to make people smile. My first few drafts kept my thoughts on Ichijo to a single sentence. I love him. There's a huge cast of side characters that I couldn't possibly begin to start talking about them all. There's Sakurako, Tsubaki, Mika, Yusuke's sisters Minori, their friend Kazari, a scientist named Inokita, another researcher John, and a bit more. Each have something to do or a story to be told. Having such a big focus on the cast makes the world feel more alive and lived in. There's more time spent with extra characters than there is our main heroes, and they're all entertaining to watch. Even the villains are kind of fun in a weird, morbid way since they kill a lot of people. There's a very small group of Grongi that we get to know, however, we got enough backstory on them in general throughout the season to know who they are. I love how scary they can seem. Killing humans is just a game to the Grongi, and that's shown even more when Daguva is on screen. He mocks Yusuke about wanting to protect people's smiles, but being too weak to defeat the other Grongi himself. The final fight between Daguva and Yusuke is considered to be one of the greatest fights in Tokusatsu. It's very raw with the two punching each other until one of them falls, made even better with the scenery matching Daguva's white aesthetics. While I couldn't say that the Grongi are the best of the villain groups, I do say that they do their job very well. Wow, I rambled on a lot longer than last time. So let's get into my final thoughts. This isn't the first time I remade a History of Kamen Rider video. In a way, I'm happy I did and would like to do it again in the future, simply because opinions can change. I've grown to really appreciate and enjoy what Kuuga brought. Well, more than I already did. I already enjoyed Kuuga from the first time watching it. I'm not saying I like Kuuga because it's the first of the Heisei era. I like Kuuga because of the focus of other good characters and the way it takes its time for the story to flow. In the end, Kamen Rider Kuuga is not for everyone, but those who stay will enjoy a wholesome show of a man who wants to protect people's smiles. With all that being said, I'll see you guys next time when we get ready to go Count Zero with Kamen Rider Agito.
どうしたのこれ食べないの
うん
もらっていい
よければ